I grew up in a mountain town so small it didn't even have a stoplight, just a blinking amber bulb that hung over the only intersection like a tired eyelid. People said the mountains kept us safe, but to me, they always felt like giant walls keeping the world out and trapping me inside. By 15, I'd learned to live with the kind of loneliness that settles into your ribs. My parents worked long shifts at the local mill, and most evenings passed in total silence, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional distant howl of coyotes. I discovered the music forum by accident one night while searching for rare doom metal bootlegs. It was an old-school message board, black background, pixelated skull banner, usernames that looked like they belonged to basement-dwelling vampires. That's where I first saw him. Raven Spiral 17. His profile picture was a blurry silhouette, but his posts were sharp, witty, and oddly poetic. When he responded to one of my song recommendations, calling my taste shockingly sophisticated for a townie, I felt seen in a way I never had. Our messages turned into nightly conversations. He claimed he was 17, lived 2 towns over, and spent his nights writing music and watching surrealist films. He spoke like someone who understood isolation, someone who knew what it felt like to be too weird for your surroundings. I told him things I'd never say out loud, and he always responded like he'd been waiting for me to talk. One Thursday afternoon, he asked, "Do you ever want to actually meet someone who gets you?" I stared at the screen too long before typing, "Yeah, I think I do." He suggested we meet behind a record shop in the next town at dusk. I hesitated, but his words, so gentle, so patient, made it sound harmless, almost inevitable. I didn't tell my parents. They wouldn't understand. Nobody in that town would. That night, I slipped out through my bedroom window, followed the dirt road into town, and waited behind the record store with my heart pounding like a snare drum. When he pulled up in a rusted Jeep, the headlights washed over me, and I saw him step out. Older than 17, older than 20, but he smiled, soft, apologetic somehow, and said, "You must be freezing. Get in." And I did. I didn't realize I'd just stepped into a story people like me aren't supposed to survive. Inside, the Jeep smelled like gasoline and old leather. Raven kept the windows cracked because the passenger door didn't shut all the way. We drove through winding mountain roads, the trees leaning like they were listening. He talked about music and films, asked me about school, friends, stuff that made him seem harmless. But the more he talked, the more I noticed how he dodged questions about himself. "Where's your family?" I asked. "They move around a lot," he said. "I mostly stay with friends." "What friends?" He smiled, eyes on the road. "People who get me." Something about the way he said that made a chill run down my spine, but I told myself I was overreacting. He bought me a soda from a gas station, asked if I wanted to see a spot near the ridge where no one could bother us. I pretended not to hear. Around 10, he dropped me off near my house, not close enough for my parents to notice. Before I slipped out, he said quietly, "I'm glad you came. We should do this again tomorrow." The way he said, "should," felt like an order, not a request. When I climbed through my window, the phone was already ringing. I froze until my parents picked up. I couldn't hear what the sheriff said, but I caught fragments. "Report of a drifter. Older male with a minor. Matches your kid's description." My blood ran cold. I listened from the hallway as my parents assured him I was home and safe. They didn't check my room, didn't notice I was shaking. I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, convinced I'd imagined the wrongness I felt in Raven's voice. But by the next afternoon, he was messaging me nonstop. "Same place tonight, don't be late." Something had changed. He was less patient now, less soft, and I knew deep down that if I went again, things wouldn't be the same. But loneliness is a dangerous negotiator. It talks you out of fear, out of instincts, out of survival. By dusk, I was walking to the record shop again, telling myself he wasn't dangerous, just misunderstood. When he saw me, he grinned too wide, like he'd been holding his breath waiting for me to show. This time, he didn't waste time with small talk. "Let's take a longer drive," he said. "There's things I want to tell you." As we pulled away, I noticed a beat-up pickup following behind us. I tried to ignore it, but when we turned onto an old service road, it turned too. When we slowed, it slowed. When we stopped near an old logging trail, it rolled to a stop behind us. Raven's jaw tensed. "Stay in the car," he snapped. Two men stepped out of the truck. Both looked older than him, hard-faced, worn. One shouted, "You bringing home another one without telling us?" I felt something collapse in my stomach. Raven barked back. "She asked to come. She wanted to—" "Don't play dumb," the taller one growled. "She's a kid, and you're getting sloppy." Then he looked at me through the windshield. "Get out of the vehicle." I didn't think. I ran. Branches slapped my face as I tore through the woods toward town, lungs burning, heart ready to burst. I didn't stop until the houses appeared through the trees. I didn't look back. That night, I told my parents everything. Not the full story, but enough that they called the sheriff. Enough that the sheriff called the investigators. Enough that the mountain town finally realized predators didn't always look like monsters. They sometimes looked like boys who understood your music taste. Within days, investigators confirmed what I already suspected. Nothing about Raven had been true. His real name was Plotch Cole Maddox. 28 years old, living out of cheap motels and drifting between states. He had a record, attempted luring, online solicitation, using fake identities. He'd been contacting isolated kids online for years, always using forums not monitored by mainstream platforms. The two men who confronted us weren't his roommates. They were ex-associates he'd lived with briefly, men who were involved in their own twisted schemes. They weren't protecting me. They were furious he'd brought attention to them. What chilled me was what investigators found on his laptop. Screenshots of my forum posts, photos of my school, notes about my family's work schedule, a folder labeled Autumn Girl with my name in it. He hadn't stumbled into my life. He'd chosen me. Investigators warned my parents he might try to contact me again. I didn't believe them. I wanted to think running away had ended everything. But 1 week later, the first email arrived. "You shouldn't have run. I wasn't done teaching you things." Then came another. "You walk home from school at 3:11 every day. You look down when you pass the bakery." And another. "I miss our drives." We changed my schedule, blocked accounts, changed emails. But he always found a new way to reach me. Never threats, just observations. Like he wanted me to know he could still see me. That he could still find me if he wanted. For the first time in my life, I wished the mountains really were walls. 3 months later, on a gray February afternoon, 2 federal agents arrived at our house. They told us Cole had been arrested in Montana after luring a 14-year-old girl from a ski lodge. They found his Jeep abandoned, his laptop smashed, and a backpack full of burner phones. The girl was safe. Cole wasn't talking. They believed he'd been on the run since the night I fled into the woods. And judging by the emails, he'd stayed close to our town longer than anyone expected. Close enough to watch me. The last email came that same night. "You're lucky they found me. Most kids don't get as far as you did." I never replied. We changed our number again, moved houses, added locks, alarms, layers between me and the world. For years, I carried the weight of that story like a scar beneath my clothes. The guilt, the shame, the embarrassment of falling for someone who didn't exist. But as I got older, I learned something important. Predators don't rely on stupidity. They rely on loneliness, on trust, on the universal desire to be understood by someone, anyone. And they are very, very good at pretending to be the person you're missing. People assume winter is peaceful. They imagine soft snowfall, Warm lights in windows, cocoa on the stove, all the cliches wrapped into a cozy postcard. But the truth is, winter can feel like isolation wearing a white coat. Snow doesn't just bury sidewalks. It buries time, sound, and sometimes sanity. The year the storm hit, I was living alone for the first time in my life. 31 years old, freshly out of a long-term relationship I had stayed in far too long, and trying to convince myself that solitude was a reward, not a punishment. My family lived 3 states away, and I'd taken a job in northern Wisconsin that sounded charming on paper, but felt like a frozen wasteland in person. I rented a small blue house on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but it had a fireplace and a window that looked out toward the streetlight on Birchwood Lane. When the blizzard warnings went out, my coworkers stocked up on beer and snacks like it was a holiday. I stocked up on excuses to avoid everyone. I figured I'd wait out the storm alone, watch a couple of movies, maybe clean the disaster that was my kitchen. But loneliness hits differently when the world outside is silent, smothered by snow. Around 9 that night, bored and a little buzzed off 2 beers, I opened a dating app. I wasn't looking for anything. I just wanted to talk to someone who didn't ask me about quarterly reports or why I didn't own a dog yet. I swiped without paying attention until I saw her. Elise. Brown hair, dimples, warm smile. Her photos made her look like someone who loved sunlight and hiking in summer, and I wondered what a person like that was doing in a town currently buried under a blizzard. Her bio read, "Snowed in and bored, looking for someone to talk to." I matched with her instantly. Before I even closed the app, she messaged, "Hey, at least the world looks pretty while it's freezing us alive." I typed back, "Pretty is one word for it. I'm starting to understand why bears hibernate." She sent a laughing emoji, then, "Same. So, what's your snowed-in survival plan?" We talked for hours. She was funny in a natural, unforced way. She teased my terrible cooking skills, told me she was stuck inside because her apartment complex had lost electricity, and kept saying how refreshing it was to talk to someone normal. At some point, I asked if she wanted a video call so we could confirm we weren't both catfish. She responded, "My phone's front camera is cracked. I can't video right now, but trust me, I'm real. Pinky promise." I joked that she owed me a rain check. She sent a winking emoji. Then, around 1 a.m., she asked, "What's your address? I should come shovel your walkway just to prove I'm a real person." I laughed. It felt like harmless flirting. I typed, "Nice try, but I'm not getting murdered tonight." She replied with a string of laughing emojis, but then she stopped responding, completely. I shrugged, assumed she fell asleep, and passed out on the couch to the sound of wind rattling against my windows. If I had known what was actually happening outside my house that night, I wouldn't have slept at all. I woke up just after dawn with my phone buzzing like it was trying to escape my pocket. Snow was still falling lightly, but the brutal winds had calmed. The world outside looked soft and untouched, except for the fresh powder gathering on my porch steps. My phone screen was filled with notifications, all from Elise, and all sent between 3:12 a.m. and 4:06 a.m. The first message read, "Hey, are you awake?" Then, "I came to your house." I blinked hard, thinking I was still half asleep. Another message, "I just wanted to see you." The next one made my blood run cold. "I'm outside." I sat up fast, my heart smashing against my ribs. More messages. "You're cute when you sleep." "You should lock your back window." "I like the way you breathe." My mouth went dry. My back window didn't lock properly. It had been slightly open for ventilation. I didn't tell anyone that. I bolted off the couch and ran to check it. Closed. Not locked. Just closed. Had it been like that last night? I couldn't remember. Another message. "I walked around your house for a while. You should see the snow. It's pretty." My hands shook as I opened my front door. The air outside cut my face like small knives. And there, in the untouched snow, was a perfect circle. A ring of footprints around my entire house. Not just once, over and over. Someone had walked laps, dozens of them, maybe more. I stepped backward into the house, locked the door, and locked it again even though it only had one lock. I finally typed back, "Elise, what the hell?" No response. I tried calling her. The call didn't go through. The app said user offline. I tried again. Nothing. Adrenaline was starting to mix with disbelief. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe she was messing with me. Maybe someone stole her phone. But the footprints outside were real. So was the cold air that had clearly slipped through my cracked window. And so was the message that vibrated through at 4:06 a.m. "I'll come again when the snow starts." By mid-morning, I had convinced myself to call the police. My voice shook so badly, the dispatcher asked twice if I was injured. An officer arrived an hour later. Young and bundled in so many layers he looked like a walking mattress. He examined the footprints, took photos, made notes. "You said she came to your house?" he asked. "She said she did." "And you matched with her on an app?" "Yes." He sighed. "We get a lot of these. Probably someone using fake photos. Could be a scammer, could be a creep, could be someone playing a sick joke on newcomers." "This isn't a joke," I snapped. He nodded sympathetically. "We'll look into it." He left, and the cold silence of the house settled around me again. I didn't know what else to do except search Elise's photos online. I reverse searched her face through an image tool. A Facebook profile popped up. Same pictures, different city, different state. Her posts went back years. Her name was the same, but she lived over 500 miles away. I messaged her. "Hey, I know this sounds strange, but someone is using your photos on a dating app." She responded almost immediately. "Oh my God. Again? Again? People keep doing this. I've reported it, but they always come back. They use my pictures, change the names, everything. I'm so sorry this happened to you." I told her everything, minus the panic in my chest. She replied, "I hope you go to the police. Whoever did this is dangerous." Dangerous. The word felt too small for the footprints circling my house. I spent the rest of the day pacing, checking windows, drinking coffee I didn't taste, and listening to the wind hit my house like fists. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined someone standing outside watching me breathe. The storm continued for 2 more days, and on the 3rd morning, when the sky finally cleared and everything was clean and white again, more footprints appeared, circling again, this time closer. By now, exhaustion had chewed through every part of me. I felt like a character in a horror movie who keeps telling themselves they're safe until the monster is practically inside the house. I called the police again. 2 officers came this time, a woman with a tight jaw and a man who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. They walked the perimeter of my house, studying the footprints. "These are fresh," the woman said. "Less than 3 hours old." Her partner added, "He walked closer this time, a lot closer." I stared at the snow, my heart sinking. The footprints were almost touching the siding now, like someone pressed their face against the windows while I slept. The officers asked about cameras. I didn't have any. I lived in a small house I barely afforded. Security wasn't a priority when I moved in. I didn't expect anyone to want anything from me. "We'll increase patrol in the area," the woman said. "But honestly, you should stay somewhere else for a few nights." "Like a hotel? Or a friend's place?" I didn't have friends in this town. The officer must have seen the look on my face because she softened a little. "We don't say this lightly. Whoever is doing this is patient. Someone who's willing to sit in the cold for hours isn't playing around." That word again. Dangerous. I nodded and said I'd figure something out. They left and I sat on the couch with my coat still on, staring at my window, wondering if someone was staring back. That night, I shoved a chair under the doorknob. I left the TV on. I barely blinked. At 2:43 a.m., a time that would burn itself into my brain forever, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. A message. "Why didn't you wave?" My entire body turned to ice. Another message. "You looked right at me." I stood slowly, not daring to breathe, and walked to the window. My reflection stared back, pale, wide-eyed, terrified. I didn't see anyone outside, but I felt someone, watching, waiting, smiling at the panic they had planted inside me. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I couldn't. I waited for the next message, the next knock, the next shadow against the window, but nothing came. When daylight finally arrived, I saw new footprints in the snow. Just one set this time, leading from the woods behind my house to my bedroom window and then disappearing back into the trees. I called the police again. They found nothing. No man, no tracks deeper than the woods allowed. They said they'd escalate the case, and they did. But I already knew I wasn't staying another night in that house. By noon, I had packed a suitcase and was on my way to a coworker's spare room. The police installed a camera outside the blue house, more out of duty than hope. The dating app profile disappeared completely. The phone number never texted again. But the damage was done. For weeks, I jumped every time snow fell. Every time a branch brushed the window. Every time I caught my reflection in the glass. Because I knew someone had stood in that same spot. At 2:43 a.m., watching me breathe. Watching me sleep. Walking circles around my life until I noticed. A predator without a face. Without a voice. Without a name. Only footsteps. And a question I still hear when the world gets quiet. Why didn't you wave? Loneliness can make people vulnerable, but trusting strangers blindly can make you exposed. Always verify who you are speaking to. Never share your address with someone you haven't met in person. And remember that your safety matters more than politeness, curiosity, or connection. Real people don't hide in the dark. Only predators do. I always thought anxiety was just a word people tossed around too casually. Something like, "Oh, I'm anxious about this meeting," or "I'm anxious about my bills." But real anxiety, the kind that eats you from the inside out, doesn't politely announce itself. It crawls in, settles somewhere behind your ribs, and starts rearranging everything you thought was secure. Mine started after my panic attack in the grocery store last spring. One minute I was reaching for a box of cereal, and the next I was gripping the metal shelf like the ground had tilted sideways. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, every sound too loud, every light too bright. People stared. A woman asked if I was having a stroke. I wish I could have answered. I couldn't even breathe. After that, the attacks came weekly, sometimes daily. I stopped going out except for work. I turned down dinners with friends. I ghosted my sister's calls when I felt too ashamed to explain how badly things had spiraled. People think anxiety is just fear, but it's actually isolation that smells like fear. It wraps around you until you believe you're a burden. One night, after pacing my living room until my legs shook, I did what every therapist warns against. I searched my symptoms online. I don't even remember the exact keywords. Something like, "Anxiety Attacks Support Safe Forum." And that's how I found Hearthmind, a pastel-colored mental health community with a motto that said, "No one heals alone." I made an account under a fake username. Within minutes of posting about my fears, someone sent me a private message. Dr. Rowan MH. "Hi Leah, I'm Dr. Rowan. You're safe here. I'm a licensed therapist specializing in panic disorders. I'd be glad to talk if you need support." My first reaction was embarrassment. Why had I posted anything? Why had I opened myself like this to strangers? But the next message came with such gentleness that I felt something break open inside me. "Dr. Rowan MH. You don't have to carry this alone. You're not broken. You're overwhelmed, and that has a root we can work through." He asked nothing personal at first. He just listened. I typed paragraphs about my childhood, my father's anger, my mother's avoidance, the years I'd spent tiptoeing around emotions like they were landmines. I told him things I'd never said aloud. He responded carefully, thoughtfully. He remembered details. He validated me in ways I wasn't used to. By the end of our first conversation, I was crying in a way that felt almost cleansing. He offered free nightly check-ins until I stabilized. I should have realized how strange that was. Licensed therapists don't volunteer free services for strangers online. But loneliness distorts logic. Loneliness makes predators look like lifelines. At the time, all I knew was this. For the first time in months, I went to bed without feeling like my chest was on fire. And I thought I'd found someone who genuinely wanted to help me heal. Our nightly calls became my anchor. He always refused to turn on his camera, claiming his office lighting was terrible, or that his laptop was too old for video, or that he was between offices and didn't want to look unprofessional. But his voice, calm, slow, reassuring, felt like something I could lean on. He spoke like he understood grief, fear, abandonment. Sometimes he sounded like he was on the verge of tears when I told him difficult memories. He made me feel seen. On the 5th night, he said, "Leah, I think your social circle is part of what's triggering you. People who don't understand anxiety often worsen it." I knew he meant my sister and my best friend, Mara. He continued, "Your healing requires space. People project their expectations onto you. You need distance from anyone who doesn't honor your emotional process." I hesitated, but they care about me. He sighed, soft, disappointed. Care and compatibility are different things. Trauma survivors often attach to people who invalidate them without meaning to. You've been conditioned to tolerate emotional mismatch. I didn't fully understand what he meant, but it sounded clinical, smart, like he was uncovering a truth I'd never put words to. Over the next week, he phrased things subtly, gently pushing. "Has your sister actually listened to you? Does Mara really check on your mental health, or does she just want the old you back? Healing isn't a group activity, it's solitary work." Each comment wedged itself deeper into me. I stopped returning Mara's texts. Then I avoided my sister's calls. Then I muted them both entirely. It felt wrong, but Dr. Rowan praised me. "You're choosing yourself. That's progress." A part of me felt proud, like I was finally taking control of my life. One night he asked, "Would you mind recording a voice journal each evening? You process thoughts verbally, and it'll help track therapeutic progress." It sounded normal. Many therapists recommend journaling. But then he added, "Include everything. Family conflicts, personal memories, even the things you're afraid to share with me live. Sometimes your subconscious speaks more freely alone." So I did. I sat on my bedroom floor and recorded myself talking about childhood secrets, family arguments, things that didn't belong to anyone except the people in those memories. I sent them to him. He thanked me. He said I was brave. I believed him. And I didn't realize I had handed a stranger everything he needed to break me open. The first real doubt hit during a regular Monday night session. He asked casually, "How old is your sister again? And where does she work?" I frowned. "I've never told you where she works." He responded so smoothly that I almost let it go. "Oh, maybe I just remember it from an earlier session." But something in his tone felt off, too quick, too neat. Later that night, I Googled something I should have checked on day one: how to verify a therapist's license number. I typed the number Dr. Rowan had listed on his profile into the state database. No results. I tried national databases. Nothing. My stomach twisted. I tried again, this time without the dash. Suddenly a match appeared, but the name didn't say Dr. Rowan. It said Dr. Harold B. Rowan, age 78, retired dentist, licensed in a different state entirely. My hands went numb. I tried calling Dr. Rowan immediately. No answer. I tried the next morning. Nothing. That night, he finally messaged me. "You're spiraling again. You need to trust the process. Don't let old fears interfere with your healing." I replied, heart racing, "Why did you lie about your license?" His answer came after a long pause. "Because people like you run when the truth is uncomfortable." My lungs froze. I blocked him, deleted the app, deleted the recordings from my phone, but the damage was already done. 2 days later, I received an email from an unknown address. Subject line: "We both know you don't want these shared." Attached were the audio files I'd sent him. Every recording, every confession, every detail of my family's trauma, and a message: "Don't ignore me again." My world tilted. He still had everything. I went to the police shaking so hard the officer had to steady the clipboard for me while I filled out the report. At first I felt ridiculous, like I was overreacting, like they'd look at me and say, "Well, you shouldn't have trusted someone online." But they didn't. The detective's expression changed the moment he heard the name Dr. Rowan. He turned his monitor around, showing a list: names, case numbers, states. "Ma'am," he said, "this individual has been targeting women on mental health platforms for years. He uses fake credentials to gain trust, isolates victims from friends and family, and collects personal recordings, some for blackmail, some for other purposes." My skin felt like it didn't fit anymore. "He manipulates trauma survivors," the detective continued. "You are one of dozens." Dozens? My knees nearly buckled. The detective asked, "Has he threatened you directly?" I nodded. He said he'd send the recordings to my family and co-workers. The officer's face hardened. "He won't. He does this for control. You did the right thing coming here." But the reassurance didn't sink in, because the truth was uglier than anything I'd imagined. While I'd been crying to a faceless man in the dark, thinking he was helping me heal, he was collecting pieces of me like trophies. He hadn't just taken my trust, he'd taken the fragile parts of my story that didn't belong to him. It took 2 months for the police to track him. 2 months of nightmares, of checking my blinds, of waking up convinced someone was listening. 2 months of trying to apologize to my sister and best friend, who were both hurt and confused and worried sick. When they finally arrested him in a small apartment 3 states away, they found hard drives with hundreds of audio files, dozens of victims, different names, different stories, but the same pattern: find women in pain, make them feel understood, pull them away from support systems, collect private information, control them through fear. The detective called him a psychological predator, and he was. Rebuilding my relationships took longer than recovering from the manipulation. My sister cried when I finally told her everything. Mara hugged me so tightly I couldn't breathe. They weren't angry. I'd feared they would be, but they were scared of how close I'd come to disappearing into the wrong hands. I spent months in real therapy, not online, not anonymous, not a shadow. I found a licensed therapist who saw me face to face. She didn't demand recordings. She didn't isolate me. She didn't talk like every word was a hook designed to catch me. Healing became a slow, clumsy process. I learned what red flags I ignored. I learned why I ignored them. I learned how loneliness can make anyone vulnerable. I learned that isolation is the oldest trick in the predator's book. I stopped blaming myself, because manipulation is not the victim's shame, it is the abuser's weapon. I still think about that voice sometimes, the one that told me I was safe when he was the danger all along. But those thoughts don't control me anymore. Now, when fear crawls in again, I call my sister. I go to lunch with Mara. I sit in my therapist's office and speak truths that belong only to me. I'm still healing, but at least I'm healing in the light, not in the shadow of someone else's lie. I used to think loneliness made people do stupid things, but back then, I didn't realize how young I really was, how soft the edges of my world still were. At 15, living in a rural mountain town where the loudest sound after 8 p.m. was wind dragging itself across the pines, the internet felt less like a distraction and more like a doorway, and I stepped through it every chance I got. My parents worked late shifts, my dad at the lumber yard, my mom at a diner that smelled like syrup even at midnight, so the after-school hours were mine. No siblings, no neighbors close enough to walk to. Just an old family laptop with a sticky N key and a dial-up connection that groaned like it hated being awake. I found the obscure music forum by accident. Someone at school mentioned a hidden thread where teens traded playlists of bands nobody else listened to. Doom metal, ambient distortion, experimental industrial stuff, music that felt like it echoed in the same lonely parts of me. I made an account under the name Stonebird, which now feels embarrassingly dramatic for a 15-year-old, but at the time it felt mysterious, adult. That's where I met him. Raven. 17, according to his profile. He had the kind of username that instantly made him seem older, cooler, like someone who knew the world in ways small-town kids didn't. His first message wasn't even flirty. It was a line about a band I'd posted. Didn't think anyone here listened to Acheron of Dust. Respect. That tiny scrap of acknowledgement did something to me. When your entire reality is a 5-mile radius of gas stations, empty fields, and classmates who think you're weird, one person showing interest feels like sunlight. I responded. He responded back. And soon our conversations became this private world where my age didn't matter and his didn't either. He told me he lived 2 towns over. He told me he homeschooled himself because he'd moved around a lot. He told me he didn't have many friends and talked to me because I actually felt real. No adult supervision, no safety net, just me wanting to be seen. After a few weeks, he started asking to meet. Just to hang out, he said, talk about music, drive around. He said he'd bring his Jeep, the rusted one he'd mentioned in stories about back roads and camping trips. I wasn't naive enough to not feel nervous, but I was naive enough to ignore it. The day we picked a meeting spot, a record shop behind the only cinema in town, I felt excitement carved clean through my fear. It was the first thing in a long time that made me feel like maybe I wasn't invisible. I didn't know, not then, that Raven wasn't a teenage boy at all, or that my loneliness had already opened a door I wouldn't be able to close for years. The sky hung low and dull the night I first met him. I told my parents I was studying at the library, slipped out the back door, and walked the half-mile toward the old record shop. It sat tucked behind the strip mall like someone had dropped it there and forgotten it existed. Half-rotted siding, a flickering neon open sign that buzzed louder than it glowed. He said he'd be waiting behind the building where the dumpsters were. Less people, he'd typed. More privacy. I should have thought that was weird, but I didn't. I was 15. Everything about life felt confusing. Meeting someone who made me feel seen felt like a lifeline. The Jeep was the first thing I noticed. Rust flaking along the sides, mismatched tires, the kind of car you only buy if you can't afford better. The driver's door opened and he stepped out, and instantly I knew he wasn't 17, maybe mid-20s, maybe older. Tall, with a patchy beard and a face that had lines no teenager should have. But he smiled wide, hands raised lightly, like he knew I was taking stock of the situation. "Stonebird?" he asked. It took me a second to breathe enough to answer. "Yeah. You look younger than I thought," he said, almost laughing. "But don't worry, I'm not a creep." I nodded like that meant anything. We drove, for hours, through back roads I didn't know existed, loops around town, long stretches where silence filled the Jeep, and I stared at the speedometer to keep my nerves from showing. "Why do you move so much?" I finally asked. He shrugged. People get weird about things. What things? Doesn't matter. His answers were always half-truths wrapped in charm. Around midnight, he parked near an overlook outside town. The moon lit the valley like a quiet stage. He talked about music, about films, about how he didn't connect with people, except me. Every time I asked something personal, he pivoted or made a joke. But nothing scary actually happened, and that made it easier to believe he was harmless. By the time he dropped me off near my house, he said, "Tomorrow? Same time?" And I said yes without thinking. I didn't know the sheriff had already been alerted. I didn't know someone had seen him with me. I didn't know the truth was already closing in. The next day would shatter the illusion completely. The sheriff came to our door before breakfast. My dad answered, still in his work boots, confusion tightening his shoulders when the sheriff asked, "Is your daughter home?" He described a minor scene with an older man in a rusted Jeep. My heart hammered so loud I thought everyone could hear it. My parents turned to me with this mix of shock and hurt, and I admitted everything. Well, almost everything. I told them I met a forum friend. I told them he was a little older. I didn't tell them how far we drove or how much I liked the way he spoke to me. They were already furious. The sheriff wasn't done. We've had reports about a drifter matching his description for months. Approaches teens, moves from state to state, always leaves when adults get involved. The world swayed under me. I messaged Raven immediately after the sheriff left. "What did you do? Someone reported you." His reply came fast. "Don't freak out. They always overreact. We're fine. I'll explain tonight." I told him I wasn't meeting him again. He ignored that. He said he was on his way already. Panic twisted in my gut. I walked to the edge of town to meet him before he got near my house, to stop something I didn't fully understand. But when we met, it wasn't just him. Two men stepped out from behind his Jeep, both older, both with this hungry, jealous anger etched into their faces. One snarled, "You stole him from us." Raven snapped back, "Back off. She's my friend." Friend. Like that word meant anything anymore. I froze. Every instinct screamed, "Run." When they moved toward me, arguing, accusing, shoving each other, I did. I sprinted until my lungs burned, until I reached home and slammed the door behind me. By the time investigators got involved, Raven was long gone, and everything I thought I knew about him unraveled. Investigators confirmed the truth. Raven wasn't 17. He wasn't a drifter teenager. He was 28. He'd been on forums for years, grooming teens, hopping states when things got suspicious. He had aliases, burner emails, a pattern. I wasn't his first target, probably not his last. For weeks, fear seeped into everything I did. Every car outside made me jump. Every knock made my stomach drop. My parents installed new locks. I wasn't allowed online at all. I barely slept. Then the emails started. Anonymous. Untraceable. The first one, "You looked pretty scared yesterday." The next, "You shouldn't run so fast. Someone might think you're guilty." Then, "I know your routine, Stonebird. Always predictable." I didn't reply. But he didn't stop. One email described what jacket I wore to school that day. Another mentioned my bus stop. A third referenced my mom's work schedule. He didn't let go. He watched. He wanted me to know. The police tried, but with no solid location, no direct threats, no proof the emails were from him. There wasn't much they could do. That year aged me more than anything in my life. I stopped going on forums. I stopped talking to strangers online. I stopped trusting easy smiles and sad stories. Sometimes late at night, I imagined him sitting in that rusted Jeep somewhere in the dark, replaying our conversations like they meant something true. I never saw him again, but the fear he left behind stayed longer than he ever did. I'm older now. Life moved forward, even when I didn't want it to. I left the mountain town after graduation, went to college, built a life with people who actually see me. But the shadows of that time still show up sometimes, especially when I hear the chime of an email late at night or see a rusted Jeep on the road. Therapists call it trauma imprint. I just call it remembering. For years I blamed myself. I replayed every decision, the messages, the meetup spot, getting in his Jeep. But the truth is simpler. Kids shouldn't have to navigate predators alone. I was lonely, curious, trusting. He was an adult who knew exactly how to twist that. I still think about something the investigator told me. Kids like you aren't stupid. You're targeted. That sentence rewired something in me. Healing wasn't dramatic. It wasn't instant. It looked like small steps. Learning to trust again. Learning to forgive myself. Learning to understand that wanting connection isn't a flaw. Raven didn't break me. He scared me, changed me, shaped parts of me. But he didn't get to define me. Sometimes I still get the urge to check old usernames, old spaces online, just to see if his ghost is still lurking. But I never do. Because some doors aren't meant to be reopened. Not when you finally stepped into a better life. Loneliness makes us vulnerable, but vulnerability isn't a weakness. Trusting the wrong person is never your fault. What matters is learning to set boundaries, listen to your instincts, and understand that real connection never requires secrecy, fear, or control. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away before curiosity becomes danger. People always say moving to a new city is supposed to feel like a clean slate, a way to break away from the noise, the memories, the heartbreaks that you pretend you've learned from but actually carry like rocks in your pockets. I didn't move for anything dramatic, no horrible breakup, no secret scandal. I moved because life had started to feel like an overplayed song. Same job, same apartment, same 3 places I ate at. I wanted something that felt like growth, even if it meant starting over 1 cardboard box at a time. Cleveland wasn't glamorous, but it felt affordable and real. The kind of place where neighbors actually waved instead of staring through you. I had savings, barely enough to float for a few months, and I planned to stretch every dollar like taffy. The first night in my budget motel, I lay on the bed scrolling through Facebook Marketplace, looking for rentals that didn't require a blood sacrifice. Everything decent was way out of my price range. I almost gave up when a listing popped up. Guest house for rent, quiet neighborhood, affordable for young professionals. Message Mr. Dalton for details. There was a small photo of a cute little white guest house behind a bigger home. It had a green door and a tiny porch, the kind of place that made you imagine drinking coffee outside on a summer morning. The price was shockingly low, too low, but I clicked anyway. I sent a message. "Hi, is this still available?" A few minutes later, I got a response from Mr. Dalton. "Hello, dear. Yes, it's available. I'd be happy to show you. It's perfect for someone like you. Quiet, safe, private. My daughter used to live in it during college." His profile photo showed a man in his 60s, graying hair, glasses, friendly smile. He looked like everyone's favorite elementary school teacher. Comforting in a way I didn't expect. He asked what I did for work, where I was from, if I had pets. Nothing invasive, nothing weird. Then he sent photos. Tons of them. A little kitchen with yellow cabinets, a bedroom with sunlight spilling across the floor, a small fenced yard with a crooked bird feeder. I almost melted. After months of feeling stuck, this felt like the universe tossing me a lifeline. "If you'd like to view it," he wrote, "I'm home every afternoon. I can prepare a lease so you know everything up front." A lease file arrived a moment later. A full PDF. Terms, rent price, utilities, even a signature line with his name typed in neat letters. It all looked official. He told me the property was on the west side, near a quiet residential street. I Google mapped the neighborhood. Safe, clean, filled with cute houses. He even sent a short video, a slow walkthrough of the guest house, narrated by a warm, calm voice. "This is the little kitchen. Over here is the bathroom. Forgive the leaves outside. I haven't gotten around to sweeping." Something about his tone reminded me of my late grandfather. Gentle, patient, familiar in a way that made me feel like trusting him wasn't stupid. Looking back, that was the first mistake. When you're alone in a new city with no real support system, kindness feels like oxygen. Even cheap kindness, even digital kindness, even the kind that comes wrapped in lies you don't know are lies yet. By the end of the night, I was convinced I'd found my new home. The next afternoon, he messaged again. "If you'd like to stop by tomorrow around 3 p.m., I'll be here. Just come to the backyard gate. The guest house entrance is around back. The main house doorbell is broken." It made sense. Older houses always had something broken. I replied, "Sounds good. I'll be there." I remember sitting back on my motel bed, picturing myself living in that cozy little place with the green door. I didn't know yet that the green door didn't exist, that the video wasn't filmed there, that the man in the profile picture wasn't him, that the warm voice wasn't his voice, that I was walking straight into someone else's stage, someone else's plan, someone who had been scouting, watching, waiting. And I definitely didn't know that a masked stranger would be standing behind a shed waiting for me. At that point, all I knew was that I was tired, lonely, and hopeful. Hope can make people blind. I got to the address a few minutes early the next day. It was one of those cold spring afternoons where the air feels sharp and wet, like it could rain or snow or both if the sky felt dramatic enough. I parked along the curb and looked at the house. It wasn't at all like the listing photos. The main house was older, sure, but the paint was peeling and the porch steps sagged. No cute potted plants like in the video. No green door on the guest house because as far as I could see, they didn't even have a guest house. Maybe it's just behind the house, I told myself. The pictures could have been outdated or from summer. I texted Mr. Dalton. "I'm here." He responded instantly, like he'd been waiting with the phone in his hand. "Great, Jenna. Just walk around the left side of the house to the backyard. The entrance is back there. I'm inside the main house on a call, so I'll meet you in a moment." That didn't strike me as odd. Not yet. I stepped out of my car, zipped my jacket, and started walking up the driveway. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. Not even a dog barking. Just the sound of my own shoes crunching against the gravel. A curtain in the main window moved slightly. I shrugged it off as the wind. The backyard gate was high and weather-beaten, paint flaking like old sunburn. I hesitated because it felt strange entering someone's yard without them physically present, but I reminded myself, I'd seen the lease, the photos, the video. People rented guest houses all the time like this. I lifted the latch. Before I pushed the gate, I heard something behind me. A voice. A woman's voice. "Can I help you?" I turned sharply. An elderly woman stood on the porch, clutching a mug and squinting like she was trying to place me in her memory. "Oh, I'm here to see the guest house. I messaged, Mr. Dalton? He said to come around back." Her face changed instantly. Not confusion. Alarm. "Mr. Dalton?" She repeated slowly. "I don't know anyone by that name." My stomach dropped. I swallowed. "He listed the guest house on Facebook Marketplace, with photos, a video. He told me." She stepped down from the porch, putting her mug on the railing. "Honey, I live here alone. There is no guest house." We stared at each other, both of us confused, but me, terrified in a way I didn't understand yet. I showed her my phone with the listing photos. She looked at them and shook her head. "No, that's not here. That's not my property." Cold spread through my chest. My ears started ringing. I turned toward the backyard gate and froze. The gate was slightly open, not from my hand, from the inside. The woman frowned. "I locked that last night," I whispered. "He told me to walk back there." Her expression hardened. Not fear, anger. "Come inside," she said quietly. "Right now." I followed her into the house. She shut and deadbolted the door like she'd done it 1,000 times. She walked quickly to a small TV mounted in her kitchen and turned on her security camera feed. "Let's see who's been telling you to walk around my house." She rewound the backyard footage. What I saw made my entire body go numb. A masked person, a man, judging by the build, standing behind the shed, completely still, staring toward the gate, as if waiting for someone, as if waiting for me. The old woman gasped, covering her mouth. I stumbled back from the screen, my legs shaking so badly I had to hold onto her counter. My phone buzzed. A new message. "Go ahead, Jenna. I'm behind the shed. Come around back." I dropped the phone. My hands were trembling too hard to unlock my screen, but the old woman, her name was Margaret, had already grabbed her landline and dialed 911 with the precision of someone who had lived alone long enough to know exactly what to do when something felt wrong. "Hello, yes. This is Margaret Hayes. There is someone trespassing in my backyard, a masked man, and he was trying to lure a young woman behind my house." The dispatcher must have taken her seriously because she said, "Stay inside. Officers are on the way." I sat at her kitchen table, trying not to vomit. Margaret placed a blanket around my shoulders like I was a child who had gotten drenched in the rain. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "did you give this man any personal information?" "No," I said, "just my name and my number. He knew I needed a place. He knew I was new here." She frowned. "You're not the first girl to come to my door looking for a guest house that doesn't exist." My breath caught. "What do you mean? This happened before?" She nodded, her expression tight. 2 weeks ago. A young woman came by, maybe 22. Same story. A listing for a small rental behind my house. She got scared and left before I could look at the cameras." "Did you tell the police?" "I tried. They said without a clear threat or a break-in, there wasn't much they could officially investigate." She looked back at the screen where the masked figure still stood in frozen rewind. "This is the clearest we've ever seen him." I didn't know if I should cry or scream. My whole body felt electric in the worst way. The police arrived within 10 minutes, knocking on the door and announcing themselves. Margaret let them in and played the footage from the backyard. One officer, a tall blonde guy with a stern jaw, leaned in close. "Same pattern," he muttered. I shot up. "Same pattern?" He nodded. "We've had other reports on the west side. Women being lured to isolated locations under fake rental listings, sometimes parks, sometimes abandoned houses, sometimes homes that belong to elderly people who live alone." "Why?" I whispered, because that was the one question no one had answered yet. He looked at me, expression unreadable. "We don't know. We've never managed to catch anyone, but it's escalating." I pressed my shaking hand to my forehead. "So, what would have happened if I walked around back?" "We can't say for certain," he said, "but it wouldn't have been good." Those words stuck in my chest like a stone. While the officers went outside to search the yard, Margaret made me tea I didn't drink. The police eventually returned and said the man was gone. No footprints they could track, no signs of forced entry, no camera facing the street to catch where he'd gone next. They asked me to email screenshots of my messages with Mr. Dalton, which felt surreal. Like I was reporting a ghost. Like none of it had happened, except I could still feel the cold panic clinging to my ribs. One of the officers said, "This is a well-coordinated scam. They catfish with fake listings, create realistic documents, send videos that aren't their property, and then lure women to isolated areas." My stomach twisted. "So he chooses women who can't afford better options?" I asked. He nodded grimly. "Exactly. Women who are desperate for affordable housing. Women who are new in town. Women who are alone." I swallowed. Hard. I was all three. The rest of the day passed in a blur. The police filed a report, but they couldn't guarantee anything would happen soon. Margaret insisted on driving behind me while I returned to my motel, making sure no one followed. I sat in the parking lot for a long time before going inside, staring at the cracked pavement and trying to piece together how someone had built such a convincing lie around me. I opened Facebook and clicked on Mr. Dalton's profile. Gone. Deleted. Vanished like a soap bubble. I checked my messages, his photos, videos, the lease agreement, also gone. Deleted on his end. All that remained were my own words, floating in empty chat space. I felt sick. I opened my downloads where I had saved the lease PDF. That at least was still there. But when I zoomed in on the signature, I noticed something I hadn't before. The name wasn't really James Dalton. It wasn't even a full name. It was typed over a JPEG, pixelated around the edges like someone had copied it from somewhere else. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. My breath seized. I didn't want to answer. Every instinct screamed no. But something in me, stubbornness, anger, foolish bravery, picked up. I said nothing. A voice spoke. Not an old man's voice, a younger one. Smooth, calm, too calm. "You're smarter than the last one," he said. "She didn't check the cameras." I dropped the phone. I literally dropped it onto the motel floor and backed away like it was venomous. The phone buzzed again. I didn't pick up. Then a text arrived. "Next time, don't be late." I dropped onto the bed, shaking so violently my teeth chattered. I turned the phone off, then back on, then off again. I didn't know what to do except curl into myself like a wounded animal. Minutes later, someone knocked on my motel door. 3 slow knocks. I froze. Another knock. Then footsteps fading away. I crawled to the peephole with my heart hammering so loudly it felt like a drum in my skull. The hallway was empty. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a second. The next morning, I went straight to the police station. Sleep-deprived, shaking, probably looking like a ghost with coffee breath and dark circles. But I didn't care. I showed them the call log. The voicemail he accidentally left. A few seconds of breathing and footsteps crunching gravel. The text message. This time the tone in the room changed. This wasn't just a scam anymore. It was stalking. It was threat. It was escalation. One of the detectives, a woman in her late 40s with dark hair pulled into a bun, leaned forward and said, "This man is getting bolder. You need to take precautions immediately." I nodded rapidly. "I'll do whatever. Change your number. Change your passwords. Stay with someone you trust. Don't go anywhere alone after dark. And do not respond to any messages. He wants a reaction." That last part chilled me. He wanted attention, engagement, fear. He wanted me. I left the station trembling. I called my friend Megan, the only person I knew in Cleveland besides the motel staff, and explained everything in a shaky voice. She didn't hesitate. "Grab your stuff. I'm on my way." I moved into her apartment that afternoon. We changed my number, my social accounts, everything. I deleted my marketplace history. I stopped going out alone. I kept the curtains closed. I slept with a light on. A few days later, the police called to say other women had come forward with similar stories. Some had been lured to empty lots, some to abandoned houses, some to parks after dark. One girl had been chased. Another found tire tracks circling her driveway. None had seen his face. "He's choosing locations where he can isolate women quickly," the detective told me. "But he changes patterns just enough to avoid being predictable." That was the part that stuck with me. He was learning, growing, practicing. I asked the detective, voice trembling, "Why me?" Her answer was simple and horrifying. "You were new. You were looking for housing. And you were alone. 3 traits. 3 vulnerabilities. 3 reasons he thought I was easy prey. But he was wrong. Because I walked away. I'm still healing. I still triple-check locks, still flinch when my phone buzzes from unknown numbers. I still feel eyes on me sometimes, even when logic tells me I'm safe. Trauma doesn't disappear like bad Wi-Fi. It lingers, stubborn and sharp. I'm slowly rebuilding my life, slowly trusting again, slowly breathing deeper. And every time I see a "too good to be true" listing online, I think of the green door that never existed, the guest house that wasn't real, the man behind the shed who was. I don't know if they ever caught him. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. But I do know one thing. He didn't get me. And he won't get the next girl if she hears my story. Predators thrive on desperation, isolation, and trust. But knowledge is stronger than fear. Always verify rentals. Never go alone to a viewing with someone you haven't met. Trust your instincts, and remember, safety is never something to be embarrassed about protecting. Your life is worth more than any deal, any listing, any price. I used to think I understood loneliness. I thought it was something you felt, like hunger or fatigue, an ache you could point to, give a name, and maybe someday heal. I didn't realize loneliness could become a place, a room you walked into without noticing, a room that slowly closed its doors behind you. My name is Daniel Hart. I'm a night shift EMT in a small Midwest city whose hospital parking lot always smells like rain and diesel fuel. I'm 32 years old, and sometimes when I look in the mirror before heading out to another 12-hour shift, I swear my face looks older than my father's. Night work does that to you. Or maybe life does. I wasn't always alone. I'd had friends once, a girlfriend too, a long-term one. But after my mother died suddenly from a stroke, I wasn't the same man. I changed in ways I didn't see, but everyone else did. I stopped sleeping. I started picking up extra shifts. I forgot birthdays, skipped social things, and pulled away from anyone who tried to pull closer. People stopped trying. She stopped trying. By last winter, my world had become a narrow corridor of ambulance calls, fast food coffee, and long empty drives between trauma scenes. Nights were loud, fast, exhausting. Mornings were silent. And in the middle of all that silence, I cracked. That's the only way I can explain what happened next. The crack wasn't some dramatic movie moment. It didn't come with sirens or hallucinations. At first, it just came with company. A username. A profile picture that never loaded properly. A girl named Maya. It started one night in late January, after a particularly brutal shift. 3 overdoses, 1 stabbing, and a teen with a collapsed lung. I got to the locker room at 6:17 a.m., sat down with my head in my hands, and opened my phone just to feel less alone. That was when I saw it. A message notification. Unknown user. Hey, are you okay? I saw you log on. Thought you might need to talk. I didn't remember adding her. Didn't remember starting a chat. But her timing, it felt impossible. Like she could see right through me. I typed back without thinking. Daniel. Yeah. Rough night. Who is this? A moment passed. Then, Maya. Just someone who understands what it's like not to sleep. Something in her words felt familiar, like an echo of a thought I'd had earlier that night. That should have been a warning sign. But I was too tired to notice warnings. Too grateful for anyone reaching into the fog I'd been living in. We talked for hours that day. About panic attacks, insomnia, the weird way grief shows up months after loss. She told me she lived alone on the east side of town near an abandoned subdivision where the city once planned new housing but ran out of funds. We talked the next night, and the next. Soon our conversations weren't just something I looked forward to. They were the only steady thing in my life. I didn't know it then, but Maya had already begun weaving herself into the parts of me I didn't check anymore. The parts I thought were dead. And she knew things I never typed, never said. The first time she said, Daniel, Why are you crying? I nearly dropped my phone because I was crying, and I hadn't told her, and I hadn't realized it myself until she said it. That was the night she told me about the man watching her through her window. That was the night I began to lose myself, and the story I'm about to tell is the reason I don't work nights anymore. Maya and I talked almost every night after that, sometimes through messages, sometimes voice calls, her voice soft and shaky, like someone afraid to be heard by anyone but me. I started keeping my phone in my uniform sleeve, checking it between calls like a teenager waiting for a crush to text. Pathetic, I know, but when you spend your nights cutting seatbelts off unconscious drivers and kneeling in alleyways trying to keep strangers alive, a familiar voice becomes an anchor. She asked questions no one else asked. Daniel, when did you last sleep a full night? Daniel, do you eat when you're supposed to? Daniel, do you ever feel like you're not really here? That last one hit too close. Because yeah, sometimes I did. Sometimes I'd finish a 12-hour shift and not remember half of it. My partner Mac joked that I was becoming an EMT robot. But inside, something was slipping. Or splitting. Maya always seemed to know when those moments happened. One night she messaged, "Maya, please pull over, you're dissociating again." I jerked the wheel. I shouldn't have. I was on a straight, empty stretch of highway. But somehow she was right. I didn't remember the past several minutes of driving. I'd been on autopilot, lost in a tunnel of exhaustion and grief. "How do you always know?" I asked her on the phone later that morning. She hesitated. "Because I feel it. I know what your mind does. I know the things you try to hide." "I don't tell you those things," I whispered. "You don't have to." That should have scared me, should have made me think. This isn't normal. Something's wrong. But it felt good to be known. Too good. So I kept talking to her. She told me she had panic attacks so severe she sometimes passed out. Told me she hated her neighborhood because people wandered near the old houses at night. Told me she kept hearing footsteps under her window. "Call the police," I'd tell her. "They won't come out here," she'd say. Or, "I don't want them knowing I'm alone." Or my personal favorite, "They won't believe me." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was the only real person I talked to anymore. Until one night she whispered something that made my skin crawl. "Daniel, someone's watching the house right now." I sat up so hard my back cracked. "Call 911. I can't. I don't trust anyone but you." "What do you mean he's watching?" "He's standing under the streetlight. I can see him. He's just staring." "Maya, send me your address." A long pause. Then, "I'm scared, Daniel. I need you. Just send it. Now." She did. A location pin, east side, near the abandoned subdivision she mentioned. A place locals called Hollow Creek. Not because it was haunted or anything dramatic, but because the houses were never finished. Half-built streets, dead power lines, empty lots reclaimed by weeds. It was the kind of place you drove past without looking. But that night, I drove straight into it. The closer I got to Maya's location, the worse my gut twisted. Hollow Creek wasn't a normal neighborhood. It felt frozen, like a construction project abandoned mid-breath. Half-paved roads, driveways that led to nothing, wooden frames rotting under the weight of years. Her address led me to the very end of a cul-de-sac. The house at the pin looked dead. Boards over the windows. Front door hanging crooked. No lights, no mailbox, no sign anyone had lived there in decades. "Maya," I whispered, stepping out of the ambulance. My breath fogged in the cold air. No movement, no footsteps, no man under a streetlight. Just silence. I texted her. "I'm here. Where are you?" A moment passed, then my phone buzzed. "Maya. Inside. Please, hurry." Every instinct screamed turn back, but her voice had become a lifeline, and I wasn't about to abandon her. The front door groaned when I pushed it open. A smell hit me. Dust, mold, something metallic. The kind of scent old houses wear like a warning label. I pulled out my EMT flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing warped floors and water-damaged walls. No furniture. No signs of life. "Maya?" I called again. Something shifted in the next room. I moved toward the sound, stepping over debris, my pulse loud enough to hear in my ears. The living room was the most intact part of the house, and the moment I stepped into it, my flashlight trembled in my hand. Because the walls were covered in newspaper clippings, old ones, yellowed, crisp at the edges. Local girl missing. Teen found dead in abandoned home. Family mourns tragic loss. And one headline that made the air leave my lungs. Maya Hart, 16, found deceased in Hollow Creek home. My heart stopped. Hart. My last name. Coincidence? Didn't matter. The girl in the photo was not the voice I'd been talking to. She was a child, and she'd been dead for years. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no. This isn't real." Then my flashlight hit something else. Photos. Taped all along the walls. Dozens of them. Not of her. Not of anyone else. Of me. Me leaving the hospital. Me in the ambulance. Me sleeping in the driver's seat between calls. Me standing outside a gas station with my hands in my pockets. Some were taken at angles that made my stomach twist, like they were taken from across the street, or through a window. "What is this?" I choked out. "Maya, what the hell is this?" No answer, just the wind moaning through the broken siding. I stumbled backward, nearly falling, trying to understand. Who collected these? Who followed me? Who was Maya? My phone buzzed. I froze. One new message. From her. "Maya, you finally came home." My knees buckled, because I recognized that phrasing. Not from her, from me. Those were words I'd written once in a late-night grief journal after my mom died, and now they were coming from her. Except she wasn't real, and I wasn't alone in the house. At least, I didn't feel alone. Not anymore. I should have run. Anyone with a sane mind would have run. But sanity wasn't something I'd been consistently holding on to lately. I stood in that abandoned living room, surrounded by photos of myself, and felt something crack open deep inside my chest. My breathing turned sharp. My vision shook. My hands were trembling so badly the flashlight beam jittered across the walls. "Who did this?" I whispered. The question echoed off the rotting beams. My phone buzzed again. "Maya, don't be scared. You've been here before." I backed up toward the front door, but my boot hit something. A crushed water bottle. Mine. I knew the brand. Knew the dent pattern on the plastic from where it had been stuck in my cup holder. "No," I said. "That's impossible." But my heart knew the truth before my mind accepted it. I lifted the flashlight to the photos again, and this time noticed something I hadn't before. They weren't taken recently. Some were from months ago. Different seasons. Different haircuts. Different partners. But all outside this house. My stomach dropped as understanding crashed over me. I had been here, many times. Different shifts, different nights, and I hadn't remembered any of it. My phone buzzed again. "Maya. Daniel, you always come here when you're hurting." I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the phone. "Stop. Just stop." "Maya, I didn't make you come. You come on your own. You always have." I shook my head so hard my neck popped. "You're not real." "Maya, but you needed me." "No." My voice echoed off the cracked ceiling. "No, I didn't. Someone made this account. Someone's messing with me." "Maya, Daniel, you made the account." The flashlight nearly slipped from my grip. "Maya, you created me. You typed every message I ever sent. You walked to this house every night you dissociated. You took the photos too. You taped them up. You built this place like a shrine, a place where you could be seen. The phone buzzed again and again. Notification after notification. Every message from her. Every conversation we'd had. I scrolled. Every message I thought she'd sent was in my writing style, my punctuation, my vocabulary. Some were written at times I thought I was sleeping. Some during moments I thought I was on calls. My dissociative breaks, pieces I'd lost, pieces she'd filled. My hands went cold. "She's me," I whispered. "Maya is me." As the truth settled in, the house seemed to contract around me, the walls bending inward like they were breathing with my panic. My phone vibrated one last time. "Maya, come downstairs, Daniel. It's time you remembered everything." And that was when I heard it, a creak under the floorboards, slow, heavy, like someone was waiting just below, someone I wasn't ready to meet. I forced myself toward the front door, but the house felt alive, like it was shifting to keep me inside. The floor groaned under each step. The air thickened, heavy with dust and memories I hadn't let myself acknowledge. The basement door stood slightly open, a thin line of darkness spilling up like smoke. "No," I muttered. "I can't do this." My phone buzzed again. "Maya, you're not alone down here. You never were." My pulse hammered behind my eyes. The voice I had grown attached to, depended on, clung to, wasn't a voice at all. It was me, a fractured piece of me, the part I had buried 6 feet deep after my mother died, after my ex left, after the nights started blending together into a single smear of exhaustion. I pushed open the basement door. A bitter smell hit me, mildew and old water. The flashlight illuminated a narrow staircase leading into a hollow room, concrete floor, water stains, nothing else, except footprints. Mine. Dozens of them, overlapping, circling, pacing. Some were fresh, some barely there. It looked like someone had been wandering for hours, days, maybe months. My throat tightened. "I did this," I whispered. "I came down here. I walked here." I moved deeper until my light landed on something in the corner. A mattress. Thin, stained, folded against the wall. My EMT jacket lay on top of it, the one I lost months earlier and assumed had fallen off the gurney. I hadn't lost it. I'd left it. Down here. My phone buzzed. "Maya, you only sleep when you're here." I dropped the phone like it burned me, my vision blurred with tears. Why? Why would I come here? The answer didn't come from the phone this time. It came from inside me. Because this place was forgotten. Because this house was empty. Because no one looked here. Because no one asked. Because I could disappear without anyone noticing. That was why I created her. Maya wasn't a ghost or a stranger or a stalker. She was the part of me that begged to be heard. The part I refused to listen to. My grief, my exhaustion, my loneliness sharpened into a voice that became real because I needed it to be. A voice that now whispered from behind me, "Daniel, please don't leave." I spun around, flashlight shaking. No one was there. But the voice was inside my head, clear, urgent, pleading. I closed my eyes. "Maya," I whispered, "you're not real." "I am real to you," she said. "I'm everything you couldn't say out loud. You made me because you were drowning." "And I can't keep drowning," I said. Silence, then softer. "Then let me go." I opened my eyes. The basement looked empty again, just concrete and shadows. I picked up my phone, walked up the stairs, out of the house, and into the cold night. My lungs burned like I'd run a marathon. By the time I reached the ambulance, the sun was rising. I drove straight to the hospital, straight to the one place I'd avoided for months, the behavioral health wing. The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" I took a breath. "Yeah," I said. I need to talk to someone." And for the first time in a very long time, I meant it. Before everything happened, before the police reports and the late-night phone calls and the weeks I spent sleeping on my aunt's living room couch, I would have told you my life was comfortably ordinary, not boring, not exciting, just steady in a way that made me feel safe. I'm Sophia Lawson, 30 years old, property manager by profession, compulsive organizer by nature. My friends say I'm the kind of person who labels my pantry containers and sets calendar reminders for trivial things like watering plants. They tease me, but truthfully, that stability kept me sane after a rough couple of years. 2 years earlier, I'd gone through a breakup that unraveled my confidence. He wasn't cruel, wasn't dramatic, just one of those men who slipped away emotionally without warning, leaving me feeling like I'd been talking to a wall the whole time. After that, I poured myself into work, rented a small but pretty apartment in a quiet neighborhood, and rebuilt my social life piece by piece. The one person who stuck with me through everything was my best friend, Mia. We'd known each other since sophomore year of college, bonded immediately over iced coffee, bad dates, and equally dysfunctional families. She was the extrovert. I was the planner. She dragged me to concerts. I helped her fix her budgeting app. We balanced each other without trying. So when the message came in, "Hey Sophia, this is Ryan. I'm Mia's boyfriend. Her phone cracked today and she asked me to text you from mine." My guard wasn't up. Why would it be? People drop phones all the time. And Mia was the kind of person who'd absolutely hand her phone to a stranger and say, "Text Sophia, she'll worry if she doesn't hear from me." I should have noticed the first strange thing sooner. Mia had never mentioned dating anyone. Not recently, not vaguely, not at all. But the message sounded normal, casual. No weird emojis, no inappropriate tone. So I texted back politely, assuming Mia was just being impulsive about her personal updates again. "Hey, no problem. Tell her to call me when she gets a replacement." He responded instantly. "Will do. She's kinda embarrassed about it, lol. Anyway, she told me you were her ride or die. Nice to meet you." It was friendly, harmless. The kind of message I didn't think twice about. I even showed Mia's text substitute to my coworker Emma that afternoon, laughing at how typical it was for Mia to break something. But sometimes danger doesn't arrive like a stranger pounding on your door. Sometimes it arrives sounding like a friend. Sometimes it starts with a harmless message. And sometimes the person texting you knows far more about your life than you realize. I just didn't know that yet. Over the next few days, Ryan texted sporadically. Always light, always casual, sprinkled with phrases like "Mia told me you're hilarious," or "She says you're the best at giving advice." I assumed he was trying to get on my good side. New boyfriends do that. It felt normal. Almost. Then the questions started shifting. The first one that felt odd was, "You still working those crazy late leasing hours on Wednesdays? Mia said you do the close-down shift alone sometimes." I remember staring at the message for a moment before answering. I did close the office some Wednesdays, but I couldn't remember telling Mia recently. Maybe I had. Maybe she mentioned it to him. I texted back something vague. "Yeah, sometimes. Depends on the week." A minute later, "You must get home super late when that happens. Mia says your building gets really quiet around then." That one felt off. The quietness of my building wasn't something Mia would casually talk about. It wasn't even something I talked about. Still, I brushed it aside. People gossip, people overshare, Mia especially. But the questions kept coming over the next few days. "Your apartment layout is so cute." Mia showed me pics. "Your bedroom's on the left of the hall, right? You still leaving for Denver on the 15th? She said you're driving. Not flying, right? You got a lock on your balcony door? Or does it just slide shut? Each one made my stomach tighten a little more. I started shortening my responses. I told myself I was imagining the weirdness. But the human brain is funny. We can feel a threat before we can articulate it. Then one night, after a long day at work, he texted, "Hey, Mia's passed out sick. She said she doesn't want visitors tonight. Just letting you know." I hadn't said I planned to visit. That detail came from nowhere. Something snapped inside me. I texted back, "Funny. I never said I was coming over." 3 minutes. No reply. I tried again. "Ryan, that's weird. Put Mia on the phone." Silence. Something chilled my blood. I grabbed my keys, stepped onto my balcony to get better signal, and dialed Mia directly. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey babe, what's up?" "Mia," I said, my voice unnervingly steady. "Are you sick?" "No, why?" "And are you dating someone named Ryan?" She laughed, an honest, confused laugh. "Sophia, I haven't dated anyone in months." I stared into the cold air, the phone pressed hard to my ear. "Mia, you didn't break your phone." "No, why would I?" "Sophia, what's wrong?" I felt something colder than fear settle in my chest. "I think someone has been pretending to be you. And I think they've been watching me." The moment I hung up with Mia, the apartment felt different, like the walls were listening. My pulse ricocheted through my fingers. I walked straight to the living room camera, the small security cube I'd installed after a break-in down the street. I hardly ever checked the saved footage. That night I opened the app. The camera's timeline showed 2 flagged motion events from the past 2 nights. My breath hitched. I opened the first clip. It was 12:41 a.m., the grainy black and white feed showing the walkway leading to my building's front door. A man stood just beyond the street lamp's reach, hood up, hands in pockets. He wasn't moving, just standing there, facing my building, facing my door. My stomach sank. He stepped closer until his face lifted into the light. I paused the video by instinct. I didn't know him. Or maybe I did. I unpaused. He walked up to the keypad beside the door, leaned in, watched the numbers light up as someone else entered the building. He didn't follow them in, just memorized the code. Then he backed away into the dark. The second clip was worse. Same man, different time. He approached my door itself, my actual door, to my hallway apartment. He knelt down like he was inspecting the lock, then straightened and pressed his ear to the door for 5 long seconds. I couldn't breathe. I replayed the clips 3 times before I picked up my phone and called the police. The officer on the other end didn't dismiss me. He didn't say I was overreacting. He just asked me to stay inside until a patrol car arrived. 2 officers showed up within 10 minutes. They took my statement, viewed the footage, asked about the messages, and wrote everything down with increasingly hardened expressions. Finally, one of them, Officer Green, said in a tone that made every inch of my skin crawl, "This wasn't just a catfish situation, Sophia. Whoever this guy is, he wasn't after conversation. He wasn't after your friend. He was gathering intel." "Intel?" I repeated, numb. "Your schedule, your apartment layout, your travel dates, how often you're home. That's not random." "What was he planning?" I whispered. Green's jaw tightened. He didn't sugarcoat it. "Burglary is possible. Stalking is likely. Something worse is also possible." Ice spread through my chest. "You shouldn't stay here tonight," he added. "Not until we identify him." I nodded, shaking. "I'll go to my aunt's." I packed in 10 frantic minutes, clothes, toiletries, chargers, my laptop, and left without looking back. But the truth followed me. I wasn't safe in my apartment, and I wasn't safe in my routine. Someone had studied me, intimately, patiently, and I'd handed them the missing pieces myself. My Aunt Evelyn lived 25 miles away in a quiet suburb where the loudest nighttime sound was usually the sprinklers kicking on. She was the kind of woman who hugged like she meant it and kept a pitcher of lemonade in her fridge at all times. When I showed up on her porch with puffy eyes and an overnight bag, she pulled me inside without a single question. We talked later, after I'd showered and tried, but failed, to calm my racing mind. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea. "Sophia," she said gently, "what exactly did the police say?" I told her everything, every message, every detail, every question he'd asked me that I hadn't thought twice about, every moment that now seemed horrifyingly deliberate. "And you're sure it wasn't just some creep fishing for conversation?" she asked. I shook my head, throat dry. He knew about my balcony lock, my schedule, my travel plans, the layout of my apartment. Mia says she never told anyone those things. I definitely didn't. Aunt Evelyn frowned. "And the footage?" I nodded. She exhaled. "You're not going back there until they catch him." "Trust me," I said. "I have no desire to." That night, I slept in her guest room, a soft, lavender-painted space with bird art on the walls and a window facing the backyard. But sleep didn't come easily. Every creak in the house made my heart jump. Every shadow outside seemed hostile. My phone buzzed twice while I lay awake. Unknown number. Blocked number. I didn't answer. I didn't check the voicemail. The next morning, Officer Green called with updates. They'd requested the building's security logs, were canvassing nearby businesses for additional footage, and had assigned a detective. "Do you think he'll come back?" I asked. A beat of silence. "If he thinks you're gone, maybe not," Green said. "But these guys don't usually stop until they're caught or scared off." My hands shook. "So what do I do?" "Stay with your relative. Stay off social media. Don't post your location. And if you get another text from him, screenshot and send it to us." I spent the next few days living in a limbo I never thought I'd experience. I went to work but drove an extra 30 minutes each way. I double-checked locks. I carried pepper spray in every pocket. I told my boss part of the story, enough for her to let me adjust my schedule. Mia called constantly, guilt pouring out of her even though none of it was her fault. One afternoon she said, "Sophia, what if he's someone you know?" I hated that thought more than anything, because when danger feels random, it's horrifying. But when danger feels personal, it becomes suffocating. Nearly 2 weeks passed before the police found anything concrete. A detective called me while I sat in my aunt's backyard, staring at her bird feeder like it held the answers to the universe. "Ms. Lawson," he said, "we've identified the man in your footage." My pulse spiked. "Who is he?" "He's local. Has a record. Nothing violent, but he's been arrested for unlawful entry and prowling. He's been casing apartments across your neighborhood." I swallowed hard. "Why me?" "We think he targeted you after seeing you come home alone frequently. The messages were an attempt to learn your habits more precisely." "And the Mia thing?" "Classic social engineering," he said. "He used a friend's name to gain credibility. It's common, very effective." I felt sick, and relieved, and scared all over again. "Is he in custody?" "Not yet, but we filed a warrant." After the call, I stared at the sky for a long time. Blue, cloudless, painfully normal. Everything felt the same, yet nothing was the same anymore. When I eventually returned to my apartment, it wasn't alone. 2 officers escorted me inside while I checked each room. Nothing had been touched. Nothing was missing. But I didn't feel like the same woman who'd lived there before. I installed a new deadbolt, new cameras, a door brace, a peephole cover. I talked to a counselor about safety trauma. I built new routines, new rules, new boundaries. The fear took time to fade, but it did fade. And slowly, I came back to myself. Because sometimes safety isn't just about locks or alarms. Sometimes it's about understanding your own limits, your own instincts, your own vulnerability. And learning that trusting your gut is not paranoia, it's survival. I was 11 the year everything went wrong, old enough to pretend I understood the world, young enough to believe the worst parts of it still belonged on the news, not anywhere near me. Back then, I spent most afternoons wandering from room to room in our tiny apartment above the auto shop, waiting for my mom to come home from whatever shift she'd picked up that week. My mom didn't mean to be absent on purpose. She was just tired. Tired from work, tired from bills, tired from my dad leaving, tired of everything except the quiet moments she collapsed on the couch and stared at the ceiling like it was the only thing holding her together. I didn't blame her. I was used to being alone. That's what led her to sign me up for the after-school program at the community center. She said it would give me something to do besides coloring in the apartment. Mostly, I think she hoped it would keep me out of trouble and give her one less thing to worry about. I didn't argue. I loved drawing more than anything, and the community center had an actual art room, not just the stack of printer paper we had at home. I met Mr. Carver on my third day there. He wasn't a teacher, just a volunteer. The kind of middle-aged man who smiled a lot but always looked like he'd been thinking too hard about something right before you spoke to him. He had neat hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a soft voice that made you lean in to hear him better. He carried a thermos and a canvas bag full of sketchbooks and markers, and he always brought snacks. Not the cheap kind either. Granola bars with chocolate chips, trail mix with the good dried fruit, sparkling water in cans that looked fancy. Kids flocked to him the way birds do to open hands. "You've got real talent," he told me that first week, looking over the picture I'd drawn of the community center's front door. "Your lines are steady, intentional. You see the shapes most people miss." No one had ever said anything like that to me. Most adults just patted my shoulder and told me I drew real pretty. But Mr. Carver said it like a fact, like he'd discovered something important. And I, lonely, eager, desperate to be noticed, soaked it up like dry soil taking in the first spring rain. He asked questions about my drawings, then about school, then about home. He never pushed too hard, just waited until I volunteered information. When I mentioned my mom's long hours, he nodded sympathetically. "That must be tough," he said. "Kids need stability and attention." It didn't feel creepy then, just kind, like he saw me in ways no one else bothered to. Over the next few weeks, he started sitting with me more often during art hour. The other kids didn't mind. They were busy with dodgeball or homework or gossiping about whatever sixth graders cared about back then. I liked our quiet corner near the window, where we could watch the parking lot fill with parents at pickup time. He'd draw while I drew, sometimes humming under his breath, sometimes telling me about the landscapes he used to paint before he downsized his life. That's how he phrased it. Downsized, like it was a practical decision, not a mysterious one. "You ever draw outside?" he asked one afternoon. "Like, on the sidewalk?" He laughed. "I meant nature, real nature, trees, water, light. There's a small cabin by a lake I visit sometimes, peaceful place, no distractions. I could take you there to do some lessons, only if your mom says yes." I remember blinking at him, surprised he'd even offer. Adults didn't usually go out of their way for me. At home, my mom barely had time to breathe, much less take me anywhere. The idea of going to a lake cabin, just to draw, felt like something kids on TV got to do, not kids like me. "You think she'd let me?" I asked. "If she cares about your talent, she should." He smiled. "I'll talk to her when she picks you up." My stomach fluttered, not with fear, but excitement. I didn't know then that grown-ups who offer the world to kids are sometimes the ones you should run from. My mom didn't hesitate when Mr. Carver introduced himself. She was stressed, sweaty from work, hair pulled back in the messy way that told me she was out of patience. He complimented her for raising a gifted young artist. And my mom melted under praise she barely ever heard. She really loves drawing, she said, looking at me like she wished she had more to give. If you're willing to teach her, I don't see any harm. I didn't know it then, but those words, I don't see any harm, were the start of the most terrifying weekend of my life. The first time Mr. Carver drove me to the lake cabin, I remember the silence. Not inside the car. That was filled with soft classical music, he said, helped the mind stay open. But outside. As we left town and the houses grew farther apart, the world seemed to stretch into a long, unbroken line of trees and gravel roads. The cabin was almost an hour away, tucked behind a winding path most people wouldn't notice if they weren't looking. This place is special, he said as we pulled up. Kids need quiet to create. You can't hear yourself think with the noise of town. The cabin itself was spotless, too spotless, like no one actually lived there. No throw blankets, no dishes in the sink, no shoes by the door, just a couch, a table, and a kitchen that smelled like bleach. It didn't strike me as strange then. Only adults knew what strangeness smelled like. You can leave your stuff in the entryway, he said, gesturing to the small bench by the door. Phones are distracting. Art is better without them. I hesitated, clutching my backpack. I just want to call my mom later, I said. Tell her we got here. You can use my phone if needed, he replied, his voice light. Service is terrible here anyway. We started with drawing exercises. He sat beside me at the kitchen table, guiding my hand gently as I learned shading techniques. It felt almost normal. He corrected my posture, encouraged me to relax my grip, told me I was improving, and I was. He knew how to teach, I'll give him that. But as the afternoon wore on, little things began to stand out. Every time I walked into another room, he followed, not close enough to bump into me, but close enough to show he didn't like me wandering. Every window had heavy curtains drawn tight. The fridge was full of identical containers, protein shakes, not food. And on the wall hung 6 framed landscape paintings, all of different places, but all with the same small signature in the corner. *C*. Did you paint these? I asked. He looked at them like they were ghosts. A long time ago, he said. That night, he made me a grilled cheese sandwich while he ate nothing at all. He said he wasn't hungry, said he'd already eaten earlier. But I'd been with him since noon, and he hadn't eaten a thing. We stuck to our rooms after dinner. At least that's what he told me to do. Get some rest, he said, smiling too long. Big day tomorrow. The bedroom he'd given me was neat, the bed freshly made, the closet empty. When he shut the door, I sat on the edge of the mattress and tried to listen for the sound of my mom's voice in my head, the one that usually warned me when something felt wrong. But she'd been so tired lately, I guess even that part of her was asleep. Hours passed. The cabin grew cold. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Moving down the hallway. They stopped right outside my door. I froze. The hallway creaked under someone's weight. Then nothing. Just breathing. Soft. Measured. Patient. I didn't move until the footsteps retreated. And that's when the fear finally bloomed. Not loud, but quiet. The kind of fear that whispers, something is off. Something is watching you. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, Mr. Carver acted like nothing had happened. He made me oatmeal, poured himself coffee. He never drank, and asked how I slept. Fine, I lied. Good, he said. We have a full day ahead. We moved outside to the dock, where the lake was so still it looked like someone had painted it overnight. He asked me to sketch reflections, trees in the water, the shape of clouds, the ripple of the breeze. I tried to focus, but my eyes kept drifting toward the cabin, toward the windows, toward the door where I'd heard him standing. Can I call my mom before we start? I asked. He shook his head. No signal told you that yesterday? I just wanted to know I'm okay. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. She trusts me. And so should you, Lila. Let yourself enjoy this." I nodded because kids learn early that disagreeing with adults doesn't always go well. Around noon, he went inside to grab more supplies. That's when I saw it, something pink glinting near the tree roots by the dock. Curious, I knelt and brushed away loose dirt. A bracelet emerged. Plastic beads, misshapen hearts, the kind little kids make at day camps. Except this one looked old, weathered, like it had been buried for a long time. Before I could think, Mr. Carver's voice cut through the air. "What are you doing?" I jumped, dropping the bracelet. He was standing too close, too suddenly. I found this," I stammered. His face tightened, just for a second, then smoothed out. He picked up the bracelet, rolled it between his fingers. "Must have belonged to one of my students," he said. "From long ago?" There was something wrong with the way he said, "long ago," like the words were heavy. When he carried the bracelet inside, something in me cracked open. Fear isn't always a scream. Sometimes it's a small, quiet shift, like a door in your mind opening to the truth. Kids don't normally think about danger, but I did then, and danger looked a lot like Mr. Carver. I don't know when I decided to run. Maybe it was the bracelet, maybe the footsteps, maybe the way he kept finding reasons to touch my shoulder, or how he locked the front door to keep animals out. But by that afternoon, every instinct in me screamed that I was not safe. I waited until he stepped outside to smoke, a habit I hadn't known he had. The moment the door clicked behind him, I rushed to my bedroom, grabbed my backpack, and headed straight for the entryway. I never made it. A sound stopped me, a sharp thunk from the living room. Curiosity overrode fear for a moment. I crept toward the noise and noticed one of the drawers in the small end table slightly open. Inside were drawings. Not landscapes. Children. Different faces. Different ages. All drawn in a style similar to mine. But shakier. Smaller. Each signed at the bottom with a star and the words, "Carver's star pupil." My breath froze. These weren't art lessons. They were trophies. I shoved the drawer shut and ran. But he'd come back faster than I expected. I reached the door just as he stepped inside, blocking the exit. "Where are you going?" he asked. I didn't lie this time. "I want to go home." His smile disappeared. His voice dropped. "You're not ready. You still have so much to learn." I clutched my backpack. My heart sprinted inside my chest. "I'm leaving," I whispered. His expression shifted again, this time into something flat, cold, like the real him had finally stepped forward. "You're not going anywhere." And for the first time in my life, I realized grown-ups didn't always protect you. Sometimes, they were the thing you needed protecting from. I didn't wait for him to say anything else. I darted sideways, slipping past the edge of the couch before he could grab me. He lunged, fingers grazing my arm, but I twisted away and sprinted down the hall toward the back door. "Lila!" he shouted. "Stop!" But fear made me fast. I yanked the back door open and ran into the woods. Branches slapped my face. Roots caught my shoes. I didn't care. Behind me, I heard him crashing through the brush, calling my name like a command. "Come back. It's not safe out there." I ran harder. The woods were thick, dense with shadows even in daylight. I didn't know where I was going, only that every step put more distance between me and him. Minutes passed, maybe more. My lungs burned, my legs shook. When I heard a car engine on a nearby road, I nearly sobbed with relief. Bursting out of the tree line, I stumbled into the path of a couple walking their dog. They froze when they saw me, mud-covered, crying, breathless. "Honey?" the woman said. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head violently. "Someone's chasing me." The man stepped forward immediately, positioning himself between me and the woods. "No one's coming out of there," he said. "You're safe." They called the sheriff. They gave me water, and when the police arrived and drove back to the cabin, It was empty. Mr. Carver was gone. Everything in the cabin was wiped clean. Surfaces, drawers, rooms. Almost like he'd never been there. Except I knew he had. I still wake up sometimes hearing those slow footsteps outside my door. And I don't think he ever stopped looking for his star pupils. Evil doesn't always look dangerous at first. Sometimes it looks polite, patient, and helpful. Trust your instincts, especially when something feels wrong, even if the person seems nice. Real safety comes from listening to the voice inside you that whispers when something doesn't add up. It's strange the things you learn to live with when you don't have much of a choice. For me, it was the long walk home after closing shifts at the diner. I'd been doing those graveyard shifts for almost a year, scrubbing counters until midnight, counting change under fluorescent lights that hummed louder than the tired chatter of the last few customers. My manager, Dale, always said, "You're young, John. You can handle the nights." Maybe he was right. Or maybe he just didn't want to do them himself. My place was 2 miles from the diner. Not bad when the weather was clear and the street still had life, but on nights like that one, cold, fog pressing in thick as smoke, it felt longer. The buses stopped running by 11 and cabs were too much for my paycheck. So I walked, always through the park, even though something in me hated that place after dark. It wasn't the kind of fear you can explain, just a heaviness, like the trees themselves were watching. The park was old, the kind with rusted swings and a pond that stank of algae. The fog hung low, and frost made the grass glitter under the dim lamps. I remember the sound of my boots crunching on the gravel, steady and lonely. I tried calling my girlfriend Megan like I always did on the walk home. The signal flickered in and out, her voice cutting in like a whisper, then gone. I cursed at the screen and shoved it into my pocket. That's when I heard it. The second pair of footsteps. At first I thought it was an echo, the kind you make when sound bounces off wet ground. But then I stopped walking, and the noise stopped too. I took another step. The sound followed. Not close, but not far enough to ignore. Steady, deliberate, as if whoever or whatever was out there wanted me to know they were there. I turned, squinting through the fog. That's when I saw it. A figure, tall, standing motionless under a flickering lamp at the far end of the path. Could have been a person, could have been a shadow. But then its head tilted, slow and unnatural, like it was studying me. That's when I heard it, the faint metallic drag of something scraping across the ground. My stomach twisted. I didn't think, didn't wait. I bolted off the path, crashing through the trees toward the streetlights beyond. Branches whipped my face, my lungs burned, my breath coming in gasps that sounded too loud. When I finally broke free onto the main road, I turned back. The park was still, silent, empty. Then I saw it. On the path, halfway between the trees and the lamp, a flashlight lay glowing weakly. I recognized it instantly. It was mine. The one I'd dropped weeks ago in that same park. Only now, scratched into its side, was my name. The next morning, I told myself it had to be a prank. Maybe some kid found my flashlight and thought it'd be funny to mess with me. But deep down, I knew better. That name wasn't written with a pen, it was carved in. The edges of the letters had been burned like someone used a knife and a lighter. At the diner, I tried to focus. The smell of bacon grease, the sound of plates clattering, it should have grounded me. But my hands shook when I poured coffee. Dale noticed. "You look like hell, kid. Rough night?" "Just didn't sleep," I said. He grunted. "Maybe skip the shortcut next time." That caught me off guard. "How'd you—" "Small town," he said, smirking. "Everybody knows about that park." After work, Megan came by. She was always calm, steady, the kind of person who laughed softly and made things feel simple again. I told her what happened, half expecting her to laugh it off. She didn't. "You sure you saw someone?" she asked. "I know what I saw." She frowned. "John, Maybe it was just your reflection in the fog. Reflections don't drag metal across the ground. She sighed. Okay, then let's go check it out tomorrow, in daylight. I agreed, mostly because I didn't want her thinking I was losing it. That night I barely slept. Every sound in the apartment felt amplified. The creak of pipes, the hum of the fridge. At some point I thought I heard something scrape against my window. When I looked, nothing was there. But the next morning I found condensation on the glass, shaped like a handprint. When we went to the park that afternoon, it was quiet, almost peaceful. Birds, kids on bikes, old folks walking their dogs. Normal. We walked the same path I'd taken. No sign of my flashlight. Megan teased me gently. See? Just nerves. But as we turned back toward the exit, she stopped. Her face went pale. What? I asked. She pointed to a tree near the path. I followed her gaze. There, carved deep into the bark, were the same letters I'd seen on the flashlight. My name. Fresh, blackened around the edges. We left without saying a word. After that, I stopped taking the park shortcut. I even started leaving work early, asking Dale to shift my schedule. He joked about me being afraid of ghosts. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. The image of that tall figure wouldn't leave me. At night, I started hearing it again. Footsteps, faint but certain. Sometimes behind me on the street, sometimes from the hallway outside my apartment. Megan told me to stay at her place for a while. I did. For a few days, things felt normal again. But one night when we were watching TV, I heard it. A scraping sound, faint, coming from under the floorboards. Megan didn't hear it at first, but when it happened again, louder this time, she muted the TV. "What the hell is that?" she whispered. I grabbed a flashlight, the new one I bought after losing the old. The sound came again, slow and deliberate, like metal being dragged on concrete. My stomach knotted. I knelt near the floor vent. The light caught something, a reflection, something metallic, deep inside the dark gap below. Suddenly, the light flickered, then died. That night, I dreamed of the park. I was running again, fog closing in. Only this time I wasn't alone. I saw myself lying on the path, still pale. The figure stood over me, holding my old flashlight. When I woke, my phone was buzzing. It was a text from an unknown number. 4 words. "You dropped this again." I went to the police. They humored me, took notes, nodded, and promised to look into it. But I could tell they didn't believe a word. When I mentioned the flashlight, one officer smirked. Maybe it's a friend pulling a prank. That night, Megan begged me to stay somewhere else. Her place didn't feel safe anymore. I booked a cheap motel near the diner, one of those roadside ones where the carpet smells like smoke and bleach. I thought I could finally rest. But around 3 a.m., the power went out. I woke to the dark, my breath fogging in the cold air. I reached for my phone flashlight and froze. On the nightstand beside me, my old flashlight was sitting there, scratched, flickering. My name still burned into the side. I barely made it out the door. I ran into the parking lot barefoot, gasping in the freezing air. When I turned back, the light from my room's window flickered once, then went dark. The police found nothing when they checked the room the next morning. The flashlight was gone. Weeks passed. I quit the diner, moved across town, tried to start fresh. Megan and I drifted apart. She said I was changing, that I was always somewhere else. Maybe she was right. Because no matter where I went, I felt it, the presence. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye, a shadow too tall to be real. Sometimes I'd hear that familiar scrape, faint, following behind me. One evening after another sleepless night, I decided to face it. I walked back to that park. The fog was there again, like it had been waiting. I followed the same path, every step echoing in my chest. And then, at the end of the trail, I saw it. The figure. Tall. Still. The lamp above flickering weakly. I raised my flashlight, the new one. Its beam cut through the mist. The figure didn't move. "Who are you?" I shouted. The sound that came back wasn't a voice. It was my own words echoed, distorted, coming from everywhere. Then the figure began to walk toward me. I dropped the flashlight and ran. This time I didn't look back. They found my phone on the edge of the park the next morning, still recording. The last few seconds were just the sound of my footsteps, and that slow metallic drag following close behind. Fear ignored becomes a shadow that learns your name. Sometimes the things we try to outrun are the ones we carry within us. The guilt, the exhaustion, the unspoken things that haunt us until we turn to face them. If we don't confront what chases us, it will follow forever, waiting for the moment we look away.